If you think that you're working in a toxic work environment, then you have a responsibility to yourself and to your team to figure things out. And you need to get it figured out and execute a plan in the next 90 days. You need to figure out because if you're working in a toxic environment and you don't have the ability, the courage, influence, or the tools to speak out about it, then your leadership is being compromised, which means your decision making is compromised. Energetically, you may be putting up barriers that prevent you from mentoring and supporting those you lead because you may be a bit too overwhelmed by what you're just simply trying to survive. And if you're trying to survive, it makes it hard to assist others. You may lack that aura of confidence and competence that great leaders carry. You may also feel spiritually exhausted because you are in survival mode. In other words, you won't show up as the best version of yourself each and every day. That's because a toxic environment can have soul level, life changing consequences for you and everyone you interact with. So, if you have ever felt like throwing up on your way to work or crying in the parking lot, if you found yourself feeling stressed just thinking about work, or maybe you're drinking to relax or eating to feel better, and probably what's most telling is if you have found yourself thinking about working somewhere else or looking at job postings, trying to find something better, then you may be working in an environment that is toxic to you. In this video, I'm going to give you a three-part system that you can use to start taking action today. The three parts of the system are as follows. One, getting clear on your why for working where you currently work. Two, setting your toxicity thermostat. And three, measuring the level of toxicity in your current environment. I first realized that an environment could truly be toxic when I was 22 years old and walked into my first crack house. I was working as an environmental engineer, and I was blessed to be working with a good leader and mentor. Part of my job was to go into commercial buildings and residential units to test for lead, asbestos, and other things that could have a negative impact on someone's health. Most of the time, each of these areas had some level of toxicity in them, but I was fine with it. It was my job, and I had a little checklist of things to do and my required personal protective equipment, so I was good. But it wasn't until I stepped into a place where I had to carefully tiptoe through trash, discarded clothing, and avoid needles that it really started to sink in. Some places just aren't as safe as others. Some places mess with my psyche and emotional well being. Some places just honestly weren't for me. Now, I didn't go into these places alone, but I went with a senior engineer and he taught me how to navigate the spaces, what to avoid, and how to interact with this new environment while staying safe. He was a great leader and mentor to me because he was mentally, physically, and emotionally available to lead and guide me. And just like I learned how to navigate around a crack house, you need to learn how to navigate your work environment based on its level of toxicity and its impact on your well being. The first place to start when navigating a toxic environment is by getting clear on why you are currently working where you work. There's a reason that you're currently in your job. You went through the process of applying for, interviewing, and accepting your current job. And at each stage of the process, you had decisions to make, and your decisions were made on what was important to you at that time. In other words, your why. You may have been clear on your why, or you may not have been clear and have been functioning more in some sort of autopilot. According to Simon Sinek, understanding your why is important because it is the foundation for the decisions you make. Your why represents your values. And once you have your values identified, you have your boundaries. So you may be asking, how do I discover my why? How do I discover my values that will help me create my boundaries? There's different activities, assessments, exercises, and tools that you can use to figure it out. However, one of the quickest and easiest and probably most authentic ways to get this answer is simply by asking your future self. And I'm talking about your 90-year-old self, to be exact. This concept of consulting with your 90-year-old self was first introduced to me by Kira Brenton and then made a habit when working with Gavin McHale. So imagine that you are at the age you are now, and you're able to go up to your 90-year-old self and ask the question, why did I work at, enter your company name? What would your 90-year-old self say? Would your 90-year-old self say something like, you were so passionate about the mission and vision that you were willing to put up with anything? Or, well, you took the job because you needed the money, but you stayed because you didn't believe in yourself enough to leave? Would your 90-year-old self say, the impact you were making on the lives of others outweighed the challenges you faced? Or, you couldn't give up the prestige of working there? Take yourself through this exercise to begin to discover your why. Once you have discovered your why from the point of view of your 90-year-old self, then ask your 90-year-old self the following question. Now that you are 90 years old, what do you wish you did more of, less of, or differently in your life? Getting the answers to these two questions will give you your values, which prepares you for the next step. Step 2 is defining your boundaries and setting up your toxicity thermostat. Is your work environment slowly killing you? Are you like the frog that is put in a pot of lukewarm water and the temperature slowly heats up? The change in temperature is so gradual that the frog doesn't notice the danger it's in. It stays in the water, adapting to the subtle changes in the temperature until it is too weak or complacent to escape. The water starts to boil and it's too late. The same thing happens to people. We enter workspaces where things seem ideal or manageable at first, and then over time, toxic behavior, stress, mismanagement start to make their appearance. And you adjust and you rationalize until the situation becomes unbearable. And like the frog, you are too overwhelmed or entrenched to easily extract yourself out of a bad situation. So let's take a moment to revisit the crack house. No one went into the crack house alone. The rule of thumb when going into these spaces was to always have a partner with you. Having a partner was one of our preset conditions, and we had preset conditions for different scenarios. It was kind of like a thermostat that adjusts the temperature based on preset conditions. For example, in the summer, you might have the air conditioner set to turn on if the temperature is above 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And in the winter, you might have the heat turn on if it gets below 68. The whole idea behind it is that you are comfortable. You can do the same thing with toxicity. You can have preset protocols that adjust your actions based on your level of toxicity in your workplace. This will help maintain an optimal climate for your personal and professional well-being. Now, you may ask, why do I need a toxicity thermostat? Simple, 3 reasons. Invisible threats, it'll prevent poisoning, and it can create peace of mind. So how does a toxicity thermostat work? There are 4 ranges on the toxicity thermostat. There's barely detectable, low-range toxicity, mid-range toxicity, and high-range toxicity. Your job is to program your thermostat by creating your if-then statements. I'm going to give you some ideas for each level, and I encourage you to create your own. So level 1, barely detectable. So when you have barely detectable toxicity, you probably don't have to do much from a toxicity standpoint. You have a good work environment. So focus on your well-being. Evaluate if the current environment, even at a barely detectable level of toxicity, affects your personal well-being or professional satisfaction. Level 2, the low-range toxicity. Here, you're going to continue to focus on your well-being. You can assess your effectiveness in curbing low-level toxicity and whether your actions are cultivating a healthier work environment. You're going to make sure that your values and the values of your organization are still in alignment, and you are going to look at the practices and culture. You will also do a health and morale check. When you do your health and morale check, consider if the existing elements are beginning to impact your health and whether or not you have the support you need to implement changes. Level 3, the mid-range toxicity, is where things start to get a little bit more serious. And you need to do your well-being evaluation. Consider how the stress from navigating a mid-level environment is affecting your mental and physical health. Is it impacting your relationships, including significant others, friends, children? Assess your leadership impact. So critically evaluate whether your leadership is mitigating toxic behaviors or if the culture is resistant to change. You're going to do a values and ethics review. Check if the organization's direction is diverging from your personal ethics and values to a degree that it's becoming problematic. And consider an exit. If your well being is being compromised and your leadership impact is limited, start planning an exit strategy that preserves your integrity and possibly advocate for change outside of the organization. So I'm not saying you have to exit. I'm just saying you might want to start looking at a plan. At level 4, which is a high range of toxicity, your health and safety is a priority. Prioritize your health and safety, recognizing that extremely toxic environments can have severe long-term impacts on your well-being. It's now time for an urgent leadership reevaluation. If you're in a highly toxic setting, in high toxicity settings, you need to urgently reassess whether you can affect any meaningful change or if the environment is too entrenched to improve. You're going to do that integrity and values check. You're going to determine if continuing in this environment would force you to compromise your values of professional ethics. You need a decisive exit plan at this point. Prepare to leave the organization if it's clear that staying would violate your principles or endanger your health. And remember, I'm not saying right this second, but you need to be taking this plan and acting on it within the next 90 days. You want to ensure that your exit, the way you exit, upholds your professional standards and supports any positive initiatives that you've started. In each case, the focus is on the alignment between your personal values and the workplace environment. The focus is on evaluating the impact on your health and well-being. And you're also making decisions about whether staying or fighting for change or leaving preserves your personal integrity. This approach, this 4-tier approach, empowers leaders like you to make choices that not only affect your team and organization, but also protects and prioritizes your own health and ethical standards. The third part of this system is measuring the level of toxicity in your work environment. It's one thing to say, I work in a toxic work environment, and it's another thing to know it's a fact. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't trust your gut, but what it does mean is that you should take your time to measure what you can measure. You need to take what is known about toxic work environments and measure it against your own situation. And if you can measure it, you can give solid reasons why to the people around you. It can help you make better decisions, and it can help you take your next actions with confidence. So in this section, I'm going to give you 12 symptoms of a toxic work environment that you can use to measure the level of toxicity in your work environment. And if you combine this with the work you did on the toxicity thermostat, then you will be able to navigate your work environment with a little more ease. So the first sign is high employee turnover. This could be in the organization, in the department. So at what frequency are people choosing to leave or being asked to leave your organization? That is a critical question that you need to answer, because if it's high, that's a clear sign. Number 2, a lack of decision-making authority. The question you need to ask yourself here is, as a leader, how often are your decisions being overridden, suggesting a lack of trust or respect? Number 3, unrealistic performance expectations for your team. How often do you feel like you're being pushed to enforce unrealistic or unachievable goals? Number 4 is ineffective communication from above. So lack of clear communication from upper management can hinder your ability to lead effectively. Is that happening to you? 5, scapegoating at the leadership level. Leaders that are blamed, or are leaders being blamed disproportionately for organizational failures without any consideration of external factors? Number 6, burnout among leadership. So these are your peers. Are your peers experiencing, are you observing any burnout, exhaustion from other people in your peer group? 7, nepotism and favoritism. Are you observing or are you being pressured to favor certain individuals over others unfairly? Number 8, leadership ethical dilemmas. Are you facing ethical dilemmas in your leadership decisions due to organizational practices or directives from above? If so, that's a problem. Number 9, personal life impact. Your work environment significantly impacts your personal life, your relationships, and overall well being. Are they being negatively impacted? Number 10, is there resistance to new ideas? Are your suggestions for innovation or improvement constantly and consistently resisted without valid reasoning? If so, that's something you need to take a look at. Number 11, lack of role clarity. Is there frequent confusion about your role and responsibilities, which is destabilizing and leading to conflict? And number 12, personal burnout. So signs of burnout specifically related to your leadership responsibilities, such as decision fatigue, could be loss of motivation, or disillusionment with the role. Some of the objections that I hear are every organization has toxicity in it. No organization is perfect. And I'm going to agree and disagree with you on that one. Not every organization has toxicity, but you're correct. No organization is perfect. And no organization can be perfect. But there are organizations that enjoy functioning without toxicity in it. Now, there may be differences of opinion, and differences of opinion are okay. But if people within the organization have the tools to navigate the differences of opinion, and you don't have those 12 symptoms that are in place because your organization deals with those and makes sure they're not in existence, then you can enjoy working in a work environment that is not toxic. That does not mean you're not going to have challenges. It doesn't mean that there are times where you're going to feel overwhelmed. But what it does mean is that you are not going to sit in that parking lot feeling like you want to cry. What it does mean is that at the end of the day, if you're in a more positive environment, if you're in one of these environments without that toxicity, you will leave still feeling great. It is possible. And why should you, if you expect to be working in an environment that is toxic, that's exactly what you're going to get because your words do create reality. Another objection I hear is I can compartmentalize. I can have my work here, and then when I leave work, I can put everything in a box and move on to my life. If you truly can do that, you're one of the rare few, and I applaud you. However, for most people, compartmentalizing doesn't work. And for individuals that want to show up as authentic, compartmentalizing is not really an option because our lives, our work lives, and our lives outside of work, they actually intertwine, they intermingle. What we experience at work goes into our home life. Our home life goes into our work life. It's a cycle. One feeds the other. And if you try to compartmentalize, truly compartmentalize, you will not be able to show up at work or at home as your true authentic self. Both groups of people are missing out because they don't get the true you, the whole you. I want to just share a quick story about, and people deserve to have the true you in both situations. In this video, we took a look at what it takes to navigate a toxic work environment. We looked at identifying your why you're currently working at your organization. The second thing we did is we created a toxicity thermostat. And the third thing we did your level of toxicity, measure the level of toxicity at your organization. It's just a simple 3-part system that should help you navigate your work environment with integrity.